They're getting smaller in height again. What's going on, everybody? Republic Cinema here, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the newly reissued Transformers Studio Series Revenge of the Fallen Leader Class Overload. And in case you're wondering, yeah, I've ditched the idea of reviewing those two Nemesis Prime figures with the green flames before I review the newer Studio Series figures. I'll review those Nemesis Prime figures after the newer Studio Series figures. There's kind of a lot to cover in terms of the new stuff coming out this year. Of course, I am contradicting myself as I'm doing a review of an older figure. It's just the curveball being thrown here is that this figure is a recent reissue. A Target exclusive reissue at that. Since he's back on the shelves at retail, I'd figured I'd do a review of him. However, I've already had a copy of this figure, which means that this is the second copy over here, aka the reissued copy. So why not just do a review of the first copy instead of buying a whole nother copy and reviewing that one? So for some reason I thought this figure was going to have some minor paint differences, but it turns out he's kind of the same. Usually when I buy a second copy of the initial one that I own, I make sure it's a repaint and not just a straight up reissue. However, I clearly messed up on that, and here I am. To be honest, if I didn't get this reissue, I probably wouldn't have done a review on him nonetheless if I had the first copy to do a review of. I usually don't do those type of reviews. After all, I did want to showcase the new packaging, and as you can see, guess what? The plastic windows are back, meaning the chances of stealing one's head will probably decrease by 100%. However, the art style has changed drastically. Instead of the Transformers logo being on the side over here, it's just showcased on the bottom with some other words, names, and logos. Also, there's no backdrop. To be honest though, I never really utilized the backdrops, so I didn't really care much for the backdrops. I'm curious to know how many other collectors are on board with that opinion. But what is a disappointment to me is the removal of the numbering system. It's completely gone. It's neither on the right side of the box nor on the left. It's all replaced with artworks of Overload's face. Not to say the artwork's bad. It's a shame they removed one of the best methods of keeping track of every Studio Series figure. But there is an alternative, such as keeping track of how many figures there were by waves, if you know what I mean. Anyways, here's what the top of the packaging looks like, and here's the bottom. It's basically the same as before, just instead of red being on the bottom, it's all black. And then you turn to the back and you get a little more info of what you get inside the packaging. Only the artwork for the back of the packaging is also altered. Overall, I don't know how to feel about the artwork for the packaging. It's gonna take some time to get used to this, but by the time they replace the artwork for this packaging with a future artwork, I'm sure we're gonna get used to these and possibly miss them. Probably not for some. But anyways, that's enough with the new packaging. Now, moving back to the figure. So before we start off with this figure, I would like to talk about the character, which I believe only his alt mode appeared in Revenge of the Fallen. We never got to see his robot mode in the movie. However, he did have concept art, which indicated at one point he did have spider legs as well. Yeah, that was never integrated onto this figure. I did want to point out how cool it would have been for this guy to have his own moment to shine in the movie. I don't know why, but I've always envisioned in my head what it would be like if the triplets went up against this guy. Obviously, they'd have no choice, but considering there were plenty of sandy obstacles to dodge and weave from, it would have been nice to have a scene where at least they distract Overload from causing more problems for Nest. I mean, of course, the other Autobots would have been better to use in such a scene like that, but considering the triplets didn't really get much screen time anyways, it would have also been cool for them to have their own scene like that. I guess having Jolt in that scene wouldn't hurt too. But anyways, we're getting a little off track. To start off with this figure, the painting and sculpting is not bad, not bad. The details on the chest and limbs are alright, and that head sculpt looks really good. But then of course you turn to the back and it's Kibbletopia, at least for the back of the back and the back of the arms. And the back of the heels too. For the painting, like I said, not too bad either. I mean, all there is in terms of color is red, light silver, dark gray, and black. and also some green, but we'll get to that later. For quality, I mean, there's not really anything wrong with the figure in terms of quality. After all, I had recently just unboxed this, and I haven't really messed around with it much. The ratchet joints are still stiff, although hold on, this wasn't as stiff as I thought it would be. Most of the joints are relatively tight. However, I've concluded that no matter how stiff the leg joints are, they'll still find a way to collapse if you try to apply too much pressure for this guy to stand straight. After all, this figure does have a lot of chunk facing backwards, but it's not that big of a problem. I've barely tried out the movements for these two extra shoulder joints, if you want to call them that, because with my first copy, they broke, or at least the part that was making them move in a ratchet joint broke off. So when it comes to transformation, I'm going to try my best to be a little careful. I don't want to end up breaking those off of my second copy. Wait a minute, is that why there was a limited stock of this figure in the first place? Who knows? During the time this figure came out, it was 2020, and there were a whole bunch of distribution issues during that time, so who knows? For accessories, he does not come with any accessories, but what he does come with is an extra part for Devastator. Its only function when this figure is in robot mode is to just be stored on the back. Plug it onto these two parts over here. However, I have come across some trouble trying to snap these in. I recommend you be a little careful. You don't want to snap off one of the parts. Otherwise, there's no way you could store this circular piece. As for alt mode and combiner mode, on the other hand, that's a different story. It's your choice whether or not you want to have it like this or like this. I personally like to keep it like that. The alternate way of plugging this in doesn't necessarily work so great. Now, if you're into pretending that this figure has mounted guns on his arms, you could always resort to whatever these are on his wrists. And you can also pretend that all these holes over here are either rocket or grenade launchers. You can also pretend that the back claw is a sort of railgun too. Honestly, I never understood why Hasbro never gave this figure any Gatling guns to attach onto the sides of his arms. I suppose that wouldn't be much of a difference in terms of accessories, but that would be something. Otherwise, the only reason to pick this figure up is to just have him as a combiner piece. I personally think the robot mode deserves some love in terms of accessories. Anyways, I think that's pretty much it for accessories. Now moving on to articulation. Starting off stiff ball joint at the head, which can allow the head to move up and down, and swivel. I'm not even going to attempt that. Too stiff. Full rotation at the arm, bend at the shoulder. Wait, there's actually a bicep swivel, and since this figure has two arms, another bicep swivel, double bend at the elbow, and the claw can move up and down. And then for the back arm, this assembly is on a hinge joint, hinge joint, hinge joint, claw swivel, double bend at the claw, no waist swivel, the legs can spread, leg can move forward, can also move backwards, thigh swivel, bend at the knee pad moves out, and lastly the foot can bend. And that's the gist of the articulation. I gotta say, it's pretty goofy, but overall I'm still impressed with how many points of articulation this figure has. If there's one thing I wish they added on the articulation is that the individual arms have their own forward and backward movements. But again, other than that, the articulation's alright. And now moving on to size comparison. Starting off, here he is next to the initially released Overload. Again, there's no difference, they're identical. Scavenger, Rampage, the Skipjack repaint of Rampage, also known as Rampage in the original Revenge of the Fallen mainline. Scrapper, Long Haul, the Payload knockoff repaint of Long Haul. Mixmaster, Hightower, Scrap Metal, Sideways, Soundwave, Bone Crusher, Starscream, Megatron, Battle Damaged Megatron, Byway Megatron, Grindor, The Fallen, Jetfire, Byway Jetfire, Jet-Powered Prime, Sam Witwicky, and then lastly for some Dark of the Moon stuff, here he is next to Jetwing Prime, Jetwing Prime's trailer, Dark of the Moon Leader Class Megatron, and Snotty Longhaul Head. And lastly, here he is next to my recently reviewed Byway Shockwave. And here we have Constructicon Overload next to the rest of the Decepticons from Revenge of the Fallen that did get figures, either from Hasbro or off a knockoff company. I suppose what we're missing for Revenge of the Fallen Decepticons from Hasbro is, of course, some protoforms, Revenge of the Fallen desert-themed brawl, their own version of the Payload repaint of Long Haul, a Demolisher repaint of Scavenger, and perhaps a better version of Scrap Metal. Be sure to let me know down in the comments who else I'm missing. And with all the Revenge of the Fallen Decepticon characters that did get their own figures, be sure to leave a comment down below which one you like the most. Anyways, I think it's time we get down to the transformation, which I gotta say is pretty straightforward. For the record, this is the alt mode and not the combiner mode. Not yet. For starters, flip this fin inwards, and then I guess we could work on the arms. Starting off, rotate this and tab that in like so. And then this tab over here should peg into a slot somewhere inside there. So you're just going to want to fix this arm in until it tabs in. And then for the front arm, bring the claw backwards and then just leave it like that for now. Push this assembly down, push the arm inwards and make sure that it tabs in onto that slot right there. Make sure you bring this down all the way. Same thing for the other side. After that, untab this and untab that, bring this down, and then push this piece to the side, tab it in right there, and just leave this line straightened out like so. Because after that, move the arms forward, bring it up, and here comes the scary part. We're going to tab this right there. Once you brought the other arm over, you can go ahead and tab the two in, untab this, bring it all the way down, which will allow you to push this all the way back. And then let's go ahead and fold all of this in. For starters, fold in the heel, collapse this flat panel inwards, bring it up forward, bring this upward. You might want to straighten it out just a tad bit, just to make sure that this part is facing downwards in a straight line. And after that, bring this out. Same thing for the other side. After that, you're going to want to go ahead and close the two legs together, and then bring this whole section down. Just make sure that this slot pegs it onto those two tabs over there. And then lastly, bring down both of these wheels like so. And here we have Constructicon Overload in his alt mode. And to be honest, it's you know what, it's not so bad of an alt mode, although that one dump truck part of the alt mode is a little goofy. After all, I believe the vehicle that he transforms into has this huge hollow space where dirt is put. It's kind of like a dump truck, I guess. While the designers did their best to make the alt mode as accurate, straight, and flat as possible, there will still always be these moments of kibble exposure. But other than that, the vehicle mode's alright. All 6 wheels move as they should, and for accessory storage, there is such a thing for the neck piece for Devastator, which of course does stick out like a sore thumb. I guess it would work, considering the place where it is being stored from. If only it was a little hollow in this section over here like it is in the actual truck. But overall, that's as far as I think alt mode goes. Now, before we move on to the combiner transformation, I would like to showcase this alt mode along with some other lengthy alt modes, starting with Dark of the Moon Megatron. See how that looks together. And the Dark of the Moon Optimus Prime with his trailer, and then here they all are together. Again, I suppose all 3 of the leader classes are pretty good. I don't know if I'd say they're equally as good, but be sure to let me know down in the comments which leader class out of the 3 over here has the better lengthy alt mode. And I think right about now is a great time to move on to the other transformation for the combiner mode. To start off, in case you have this intact, unintact it. That's not a word. Next, you're going to want to untab this whole section and untab that too, and then push it there and leave it there. Untab the wheels and leave them out in a straight, or at least a flat line. Untab the legs, and then you're actually going to leave it like this. Well, except for this. You're going to want to go ahead and, just leave it like that. After that, untab these 2. Move one down a notch, not all the way, because what you're going to do next is rotate it, bend it, bring it all the way out, and then rotate this once more. Same thing for the other side. Next thing you're going to want to do is untab this, bring this assembly up, move the front arm out, and then make sure that the claw is closed all the way there. Then what you're going to do next is tab it right there. Same thing for the other side. And here you have Overload in his combiner mode, which of course the combiner mode is a mix between the lower half of the torso and the upper half of the legs. He's basically the waist. Now, personally, I thought this part of Bayverse Devastator was a little goofy. He kind of made him a little more flat around this area. It also didn't necessarily help that the head was sticking out, or at least the back of the head. And I wasn't a big fan of the way the wheels were sticking out too, but hey, it is what it is. I will say, this figure did the job with holding all those Devastator body parts, which I won't be showcasing in this review since I've kind of kept this review for long now, I believe. So, be sure to let me know down in the comments which part of the Studio Series Devastator is your favorite part. And don't say what I think you're going to say. And I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all I had to say for the new reissue of the Transformers Studio Series Revenge of the Fallen Leader Class Overload. Overall, I think this is a good pickup, specifically for those who missed out on the original release of Overload. Otherwise, if you already have this figure, then don't bother, unless you care to pick up a replacement just in case your original copy is broken. But again, it's all up to you. If you are looking to pick this reissue up, he is available over at both the website and physical stores of Target. After all, considering he's part of the Power Collection, he is a Target exclusive. Oh, and he ain't cheap. He's $55, which, if you remember with the original release of this figure, he was only $50 or $51. I don't know. I've kind of forgot how much these figures went for in 2020, but what I do know is they costed $5 less than how much they cost now. But anyways, let me know down in the comments what you think of this figure. Do you like him? Are you going to pick him up? Do you not like him? Are you not going to pick him up? And if there's anything I forgot to mention in this review, oh well. But if you liked what you saw in this video, be sure to slam that like button. Share this with your friends as well. Turn on post notifications so that way you don't miss another upload. Let me know how I did in this review. And most importantly, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching. Teo!